History is often romanticized, focusing on the achievements and heroic tales of human civilization. However, beneath these narratives lie dark and unsettling truths that many prefer to ignore or forget. These historical facts reveal the more sinister aspects of humanity, shedding light on periods of cruelty, exploitation, and inhumanity. Here, we delve into 10 dark historical facts that most people do not want to know about, exploring the grim realities that shaped our world. 1. The Atlantic Slave Trade. The Atlantic slave trade, spanning from the 16th to the 19th centuries, is one of the darkest chapters in human history. Millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homeland, shipped across the Atlantic Ocean under horrific conditions, and sold into slavery in the Americas. The brutality of this trade was immense. Slaves were treated as property, subjected to severe physical and psychological abuse, and denied basic human rights. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was especially harrowing. Enslaved Africans were crammed into ships with little space to move, leading to the spread of disease and a high mortality rate. Those who survived the journey faced grueling labor on plantations, where they were often subjected to brutal punishments for even minor infractions. The legacy of the Atlantic slave trade continues to impact societies today, contributing to ongoing racial disparities and tensions. 2. The Holocaust. The Holocaust remains one of the most horrifying and systematic genocides in history. During World War II, Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler's regime, implemented a plan to exterminate 6 million Jews, along with millions of others deemed undesirable, including Romani people, disabled individuals, political dissidents, and homosexuals. The Nazis constructed concentration camps and extermination camps, where victims were subjected to inhumane conditions, forced labor, medical experiments, and mass executions. The scale and efficiency of the Holocaust's machinery of death are chilling reminders of the capacity for human cruelty. The Holocaust not only decimated populations but also left deep scars on survivors and their descendants, shaping global consciousness about genocide and human rights. 3. The Rwandan Genocide. The Rwandan Genocide, which occurred over a span of 100 days in 1994, saw the mass slaughter of Tutsi and moderate Hutu populations by extremist Hutus. An estimated 800,000 people were killed in a wave of brutal violence, characterized by machete attacks, rape, and torture. The genocide was fueled by deep-seated ethnic tensions, political instability, and propaganda that dehumanized the Tutsi minority. The international community's failure to intervene and stop the genocide remains a source of profound regret and criticism. The aftermath of the genocide left Rwanda in a state of devastation, with deep psychological and social wounds that the country continues to address through reconciliation and justice efforts. 4. The Nanjing Massacre. The Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanjing, took place during the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1937-1938, when Japanese troops captured the Chinese city of Nanjing. Over a period of 6 weeks, an estimated 300,000 Chinese civilians and disarmed soldiers were brutally murdered. In addition to mass killings, the Japanese soldiers committed widespread sexual violence, with tens of thousands of women and girls being raped. The brutality of the Nanjing Massacre remains a deeply traumatic event in Chinese history and a contentious issue in Sino-Japanese relations. Efforts to acknowledge and commemorate the massacre continue, highlighting the importance of remembering and addressing historical atrocities. 5. The Armenian Genocide. The Armenian Genocide, carried out by the Ottoman Empire during World War I, led to the systematic extermination of 1.5 million Armenians. The genocide involved mass killings, forced deportations, and death marches through the Syrian desert. Armenian men were often executed outright, while women, children, and the elderly were subjected to starvation, abuse, and death during forced relocations. Despite substantial evidence and documentation, the Armenian Genocide remains a controversial and often denied event, particularly by the Turkish government. The ongoing struggle for recognition and acknowledgement of the genocide underscores the importance of historical truth and reconciliation. 6. The transatlantic exploitation of indigenous populations. The colonization of the Americas led to the widespread exploitation, displacement, and decimation of indigenous populations. European colonizers, driven by a desire for land, resources, and power, subjected indigenous people to violence, forced labor, and disease. Entire civilizations, such as the Aztecs and Incas, were destroyed, and indigenous cultures were systematically suppressed. The introduction of European diseases, to which indigenous populations had no immunity, caused massive population declines. Additionally, policies such as forced assimilation, relocation, and cultural erasure further marginalized indigenous communities. The legacy of colonization continues to impact indigenous peoples, who face ongoing struggles for rights, recognition, and cultural preservation. 7. The Cambodian Genocide. The Cambodian Genocide, orchestrated by the Khmer Rouge regime under the leadership of Pol Pot, resulted in the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million people between 1975 and 1979. The regime sought to create an agrarian utopia, leading to the forced evacuation of cities, mass executions, and extreme labor camps. Intellectuals, professionals, religious leaders, and ethnic minorities were targeted, and the country was plunged into a state of terror and suffering. The Khmer Rouge's reign of terror left Cambodia devastated, with countless families torn apart and the social fabric shattered. The long-term effects of the genocide continue to affect Cambodian society, as efforts toward justice and reconciliation proceed. 8. The exploitation during the Belgian Congo. The colonization of the Congo Free State, under the rule of King Leopold II of Belgium from 1885 to 1908, was marked by extreme brutality and exploitation. The quest for rubber and other resources led to the enslavement and abuse of the Congolese population. Forced labor, mutilation, and killings were common practices used to enforce quotas and maintain control. The atrocities in the Congo Free State resulted in the deaths of an estimated 10 million people. The exploitation and violence inflicted on the Congolese people were driven by greed and the pursuit of economic gain, leaving a legacy of trauma and underdevelopment that the region continues to struggle with. 9. The Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward, initiated by Mao Zedong in China between 1958 and 1962, aimed to rapidly transform the country from an agrarian society into an industrial superpower. However, the policies implemented during this period led to one of the deadliest famines in history. Poor planning, forced collectivization, and unrealistic production targets resulted in widespread food shortages and starvation. It is estimated that 15 to 45 million people died during the Great Leap Forward, making it one of the largest man-made disasters in history. The suffering and loss of life caused by this campaign had a profound impact on Chinese society and remains a dark chapter in the country's history. 10. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, conducted by the United States Public Health Service between 1932 and 1972, is a shocking example of medical ethics violations and racial exploitation. The study involved 600 African American men, 399 of whom had syphilis. The men were misled about the nature of the study and were not provided with effective treatment, even after penicillin became widely available. The purpose of the study was to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis, but it was conducted without informed consent and at great harm to the participants. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study led to severe health consequences and deaths among the men involved, as well as significant distrust of the medical establishment within African American communities. This unethical study has become a symbol of racial injustice and the need for ethical standards in medical research. Conclusion. These 10 dark historical facts represent only a fraction of the grim realities that have shaped human history. They serve as stark reminders of the capacity for cruelty, exploitation, and inhumanity that exists within societies. While these events are uncomfortable to confront, acknowledging and understanding them is crucial for ensuring that such atrocities are not repeated. Learning from history involves not only celebrating achievements but also facing its darkest chapters with honesty and reflection. By doing so, we honor the victims, understand the complex dynamics that lead to such events, and strive to build a future where such horrors are less likely to occur. Confronting these dark historical facts can be painful, but it is a necessary step toward justice, reconciliation, and a more humane world.